They tried to take my ranch, my life's blood, but I showed them what a true Texan does when backed into a corner. I hit back with something they never saw coming. "Hey there, folks. Where are you watching from and what time is it there? Phone, computer, or TV? Let me know. I'm Jack Thompson, and this is the story of how I turned the tables on a pack of busybodies who thought they could bully me off my own land." Buckle up, because this one's a wild ride. Picture this: a sprawling ranch under the big Texas sky, where the horizon stretches so wide you can almost see tomorrow. That's my home, the Thompson Ranch, passed down through 5 generations of my family. It's not just dirt and grass. It's my blood, my sweat, my everything. My great-granddaddy tamed this land with nothing but a horse, a rifle, and a stubborn streak a mile wide. I've got that streak too, and let me tell you, it served me well. I'm what you'd call a rancher through and through. I've got calusas older than some of the kids in this county, and I can tell you more about cattle than you'd ever want to hear. I love the smell of fresh hay, the creak of my old barn, and the way the sun paints the hills gold at dusk. This land isn't just where I live, it's who I am. And I'll be damned if some pencil-pushing HOA from a shiny new neighborhood thinks they can tell me how to run it. Now, I know what you're thinking: HOAs. Those are for folks with manicured lawns and matching mailboxes, not for a guy like me with 100 acres and a herd of longhorns. You'd be right, but that didn't stop them. See, a few years back some developer decided rural Texas needed a dose of suburbia. They plopped down a fancy neighborhood called Crestview Estates, right next to my property line. We're talking McMansions with fake shutters, cul-de-sacs named after trees they bulldozed to build and folks who think country means a plaid shirt from the mall. Fine by me, live and let live, you know. But then their HOA started acting like they owned my land too. I won't spill all the beans just yet, but let's just say these folks didn't take kindly to my way of life. They came at me with letters, fines, and enough red tape to choke a steer. They thought they could starve me out, force me to sell the ranch my family's held since before their great-grandparents were in diapers. They underestimated me. I'm not the type to roll over, and I sure as hell don't scare easy. When they pushed, I pushed back, hard. And when they tried to bury me, I built something that made their heads spin: a gun range, right on the edge of their precious little utopia. This ain't just a story about me, though. It's about standing your ground when someone tries to take what's yours. It's about the kind of grit that runs deep in folks who know what it means to work the land. And yeah, it's about giving a bunch of HOA Karens the wake-up call they deserved. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. Let's rewind to where it all started, back when I thought a strongly worded letter was the worst they could throw at me. My ranch sits in the heart of Hill County, Texas, where the air smells like cedar and freedom. It's a place where you can still hear coyotes at night and see stars that city folks forgot exist. The main house is a weathered beauty, built by my granddaddy in the 1930s, with a porch that's seen more sunsets than I can count. The barn's just down the hill, where I keep my trusty tractor, a beat-up old thing that's been in the family longer than I have. Out back, there's a shooting range I set up years ago, just a few targets for plinking with my .22. Nothing fancy, but it's mine, and it's where I blow off steam after a long day wrestling calves or fixing fences. I've never been one for neighbors poking their noses in my business. Growing up out here, the nearest house was 5 miles away, and community standards meant helping a guy fix his truck, not whining about his mailbox. So when Crestview Estates sprang up, I figured I'd just ignore them. Their houses were close enough I could see their rooftops from my north pasture, but far enough that I didn't have to smell their artisanal candles. I kept to myself, tending my cattle, mending my fences, and living the way my family always has. Then the letters started showing up, polite at first, like they were doing me a favor by pointing out how my life didn't fit their aesthetic. I laughed them off, thinking it was some city slicker's idea of a joke. But those letters kept coming, and they weren't so polite anymore. They wanted me to change things. Big things. Things that'd been part of this ranch since before their neighborhood was a twinkle in a developer's eye. I started to realize this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a fight, and they were playing for keeps. I'm not gonna lie, it got under my skin. This ranch isn't just a piece of property, it's my legacy. Every fence post, every blade of grass carries a story of my family's fight to hold on to it. My daddy taught me to ride here. My mama taught me to pray here. And I'll be damned if I let some HOA with a superiority complex take it away. So I dug in my heels, and when they came at me with everything they had, I came up with a plan they never saw coming. Stick with me, because this story's got more twists than a rattlesnake in a windstorm. By the time we're done, you'll see how a stubborn old rancher turned a losing battle into a victory that had the whole county talking. And maybe, just maybe, you'll get a chuckle out of how I made those HOA folks wish they'd never messed with Jack Thompson. But I had no idea, this was just the opening salvo in their campaign to run me off my land. Alright folks, if you're still tuned in, get ready for a tale that'll have you shaking your head at the audacity of some people. Last time, I shared how the Crestview Estates HOA thought they could dictate terms on my Hill County ranch, like I was some tenant in their gated community. I figured their fussy letters were just hot air, something to chuckle about over coffee at the feed store. Turns out I was dead wrong. Let's paint the picture. My ranch is a wide open stretch of Texas heartland, where longhorns roam and the wind carries the scent of cedar. The house, built by my granddaddy in the 30s, stands sturdy with a porch that's hosted more sunsets than a postcard. By the barn, my old tractor sits like a loyal dog, weathered but trusty, parked where it's been since my daddy was a boy. Out back there's a modest shooting range, a few steel targets for my .22, where I clear my head after a day wrestling fence wire or hauling feed. This land's been in my family for 5 generations, and every acre tells a story of grit and stubborn pride. I've spent my life tending this place, same as my kin before me. I know the rhythm of the seasons, the quirks of every pasture, and the exact spot where the creek runs dry in July. This ranch isn't just home, it's my legacy, carved out by folks who didn't bow to anyone. So when Crestview Estates sprouted up next door, I barely blinked. Their neighborhood was a sea of cookie-cutter houses, all fake stone and plastic charm, built for city folks chasing a rural vibe. Without the dirt. I kept to my cattle, they kept to their wine nights, and I thought we'd get along just fine by staying out of each other's way. Then the letters started arriving. The first one came from the Crestview HOA, written on paper so crisp it practically crackled with self-importance. They had the nerve to call my tractor an unsightly nuisance that was dragging down their property values. They wanted it hidden, maybe tucked away in a shed I don't have. I read that letter and laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. My tractor's been by that barn since their neighborhood was just a patch of mesquite. Property values. My ranch was here when their land wasn't worth a nickel. This thing's got more history than their pilates classes. I muttered to my dog Buck, who just tilted his head like he was in on the joke. I figured it was a one-time stunt, some overzealous newcomer flexing their rule book. My ranch isn't under their control. I've never signed their papers or paid their fees. My family's held this land free and clear since the 1800s, and no HOA can claim a speck of it. But these folks didn't care about facts. They saw my ranch as a stain on their suburban fantasy, and they were itching to scrub it clean. That letter wasn't a request. It was a declaration of war, and I was too busy fixing a gate to see it coming. Let's talk about Crestview for a second. This place popped up overnight, a developer's dream of turning Texas dirt into HOA heaven. Think 3-car garages, lawns mowed to military precision, and rules about everything from fence colors to how long you can park your RV. The residents were mostly urban transplants, folks who thought country living meant a Starbucks within driving distance. They brought their bureaucracy with fining people for things like leaving a trash can out or planting the wrong kind of shrub. I'd heard tales of HOAs pulling this nonsense elsewhere, like one in Florida that tried to fine a guy for his boat, even though he lived outside their boundaries. It's the kind of overreach that makes you wonder if some people just love power too much. At first, I treated the letters like a bad joke. Every few weeks, another one would show up, griping about my tractor, or the disorderly look of my hay bales, or the fact that my barn wasn't painted to match their beige utopia. I'd share 'em with the guys at the feed store, and we'd have a good laugh. I even sent a reply once, real civil, explaining that my ranch wasn't their business, and maybe they should focus on their own yards. I thought that'd end it. It didn't. In hindsight, I should have caught on sooner. Those letters weren't just petty, they were calculated. The HOA wasn't annoyed, they were relentless, building a case to push me out. They didn't want my tractor moved, they wanted my ranch gone, replaced with more of their soulless McMansions. But back then, I was just a rancher trying to keep my herd healthy and my fences tight, blind to the storm brewing on my doorstep. Hang tight, because this fight's about to heat up faster than a Texas summer. Those HOA folks were about to learn that tangling with a man on his own land is a gamble they'd regret. I was at my breaking point, but then I got an idea that changed everything. Folks, if you've stuck with me this far, you're about to see how a petty squabble turned into an all-out war. The Crestview Estates HOA had been peppering me with letters about my tractor and hay bales, acting like my Hill County ranch was a blight on their suburban dream. I'd laughed off their complaints, thinking they'd tire themselves out, but these folks weren't playing checkers. They were playing chess, and I was about to find out just how far they'd go to push me off my land. By now, you've got a sense of my world, a sprawling Texas ranch, home to my longhorns, my granddaddy's house, and that old tractor parked by the barn. I'd been brushing off the HOA's letters, assuming they were just city transplants with too much time on their hands. But spring turned to summer, and their tone shifted from annoying to downright vicious. They started sending daily notices, each one slapped with a $1,000 fine for violations. They'd dreamed up. My tractor was still an eyesore. My cattle were excessively noisy, and even my fence posts were aesthetically non-compliant. Those posts were sunk by my daddy's hands, and they'd outlast every one of their McMansions. It got worse. One sweltering July afternoon, a couple of HOA board members showed up at my gate, clipboards in hand, demanding to inspect my property for community oversight. I met 'em with a stare that could curdle milk, channeling my grandfather, who once ran off a tax collector with a shotgun, and a few choice words. "This ain't your land," I told him, pointing to the property line. "You step 1 foot past that gate, and we'll have a problem." They huffed and puffed, but they left. I thought I'd won that round, until the sheriff showed up a week later. Now Sheriff Daniels is a good old boy, known me since we were kids fishing in the creek. He looked embarrassed as he handed me a stack of papers. "Jack, I hate to do this, but the HOA's filed a complaint. They're claiming your ranch is a nuisance." A nuisance. My family's been raising cattle here for a century, and now these newcomers were crying foul. The sheriff shrugged, confirming what I already knew: the HOA had no legal claim over my land. He advised me to ignore but I could see the writing on the wall. These folks weren't backing down. Then came the knockout punch. In August, I got served with a lawsuit. The HOA was suing to shut down my ranching operations, citing nuisance laws and community harm. They slapped me with a cease and desist order, demanding I stop all disruptive activities, meaning my cattle, my tractor, my entire way of life, until the trial. The legal jargon made my head spin, but the message was clear: They wanted to bleed me dry with lawyer fees until I had no choice but to sell. I felt like a steer caught in a choke gate, strangled on my own land. Nights got rough after that. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, the weight of it all pressing on my chest. Legal bills were piling up faster than I could sell calves, and the thought of losing the ranch, my family's legacy, kept me tossing and turning. I started doubting myself, wondering if I was too stubborn for my own good. One evening I stopped by the local bar where my buddy Tom runs the place. Over a cold beer I spilled my guts. Tom listened, then leaned back with a grin. "Sounds like they need a taste of their own medicine, Jack. You're a Texan. Hit where it hurts." Tom's words stuck with me, but I didn't have a plan yet. The HOA's lawsuit was like a storm cloud over the ranch, and I was running out of time. I'd heard of other folks dealing with this kind of nonsense. There was a farmer in Georgia who got sued by an HOA for his combine, even though he wasn't in their jurisdiction. Another guy on some online forum talked about an HOA trying to fine him for unapproved chickens on his rural property. These stories made me realize I wasn't alone, but they also showed how ruthless HOAs could be when they smelled weakness. I wasn't weak though. Not yet. My grandfather's blood ran in my veins, and he didn't raise no quitters. I'd barred those HOA busybodies from my land, and the sheriff had my back, but this lawsuit was a whole new beast. I needed a way to fight back, something they wouldn't see coming. Little did I know, the seed of an idea was taking root, one that'd turn this fight into a showdown they'd never forget. Hold on tight, because this story's about to take a turn wilder than a twister in a trailer park. The HOA thought they had me cornered, but they were about to learn what happens when you back a Texan into a fight. Their faces were priceless when they realized they couldn't touch me. If you're still riding along, folks, you're in for the part where this story takes a turn sharper than a barrel racer's cut. The Crestview Estates HOA had me pinned down with their lawsuit, trying to choke the life out of my Hill County ranch with fines, inspections, and a cease and desist order that threatened everything my family's built over 5 generations. I was losing sleep, burning through savings, and feeling the walls close in, but Tom's words at the bar, "Hit where it hurts," lit a spark. I wasn't done yet, and I was about to show those HOA busybodies what happens when you corner a Texan. By late summer, I was at my wit's end. The lawsuit loomed like a vulture, and those 1,000 daily fines for my tractor and cattle were piling up in a folder I couldn't bear to open. I needed a way out, so I called up my old friend Carl, a lawyer who's been keeping ranchers like me out of trouble since we were kids sneaking beers behind the barn. I laid it all out. The letters, the inspections, the lawsuit. Carl listened, then let out a belly laugh that echoed through the phone. "Jack, these folks are dumber than a sack of hammers," he said. "They've got no claim on your land, and I've got something that'll make 'em regret ever knocking on your gate." Carl's idea was a stroke of genius, rooted in Texas law and pure defiance. My ranch was zoned for agricultural and recreational use, and in Hill County, recreational includes gun ranges, perfectly legal, no permits needed beyond basic safety compliance. Carl suggested I open a professional shooting range right on the edge of my property, smack against Crestview's pristine neighborhood. It'd be a middle finger to their community standards. And better yet, it could turn a profit to offset those legal fees. I didn't have to think twice. "Let's do it," I said, and just like that, Liberty Range was born. I poured every dime I could scrape together into the project. By fall, I'd cleared a strip of land along the north pasture, where my property line kissed Crestview's backyard fences. I built a proper setup, berms, targets, a check-in shack, the works, all compliant with state regulations. I named it Liberty Range, a jab at the OA's obsession with control, and hung a sign so big you could read it from their cul-de-sacs. Opening day was a sight. Locals, hunters, even a few off-duty border patrol agents showed up, their trucks kicking up dust as they lined up to shoot. The crack of rifles and shotguns echoed across the hills, and I swear I felt my grandfather's grin from the great beyond. The HOA's reaction was better than a front row seat at a comedy show. Karen Williams, the HOA president with a perm tighter than her purse strings, marched over the day we opened, red-faced and waving a clipboard like it was a sword.
"This is outrageous,"
she shrieked, ranting about noise, safety, and property values. I leaned against my gate, sipping coffee, and let her tire herself out. "Mom," I said, "I've got permits, insurance, and the law on my side. Y'all wanted quiet. Should have stayed in Dallas." Carl had made sure every I was dotted, every T crossed. Karen stormed off, promising action, but I knew she was shooting blanks. Word spread fast and Liberty Range became a hit. Veterans came to practice, families brought their kids for lessons, and even some city folks drove out for a taste of real Texas. The cash register sang, easing the sting of those legal bills, but the real payoff was the look on Crestview's faces every time a volley rang out. They held a community meeting to address the crisis, and I heard Karen had a meltdown when a rancher in the crowd asked why they didn't just move if they hated noise so much. I didn't attend, too busy running my range, but I got a kick out of the story. The best part: one afternoon, as I was restocking targets, a stray cow from my herd wandered into Crestview's picket line during one of their protests. Those HOA folks scattered like roaches when the lights come on, their signs about peaceful living trampled in the dust. I herded the cow back, tipping my hat to the crowd. "Sorry about that," I called out, grinning. "Wuss, she don't like your signs neither." This wasn't just me being ornery. Gun ranges like mine are a real thing in Texas, where laws favor property rights and firearms. I'd heard of ranchers using ranges to fend off encroaching developers, and Carl confirmed it was a solid play. The HOA could scream all they wanted, but Liberty Range was untouchable, and it was turning the tide. My ranch was still under fire from their lawsuit, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was the one calling the shots. Hang on, because this fight's headed for a showdown that'll have the whole county buzzing. The HOA was about to learn that their paper threats were no match for a man with a plan and a whole lot of Texas grit. The day of reckoning came, and I was ready. Folks, if you've been riding this trail with me, you know the Crestview Estates HOA had been gunning for my Hill County ranch like a pack of wolves circling a wounded steer. They'd tried everything: fines, inspections, a lawsuit, to choke me out, but I'd fired back with Liberty Range, my legal as hell gun range that had madder than a wet hen. By the time fall rolled around, tensions were higher than a cat's back, and the whole county was watching to see who'd blink first. The HOA, desperate to save face, called a town hall meeting to address the ongoing disturbance. They packed the community center with Crestview residents, hoping to rally a mob against me. Karen Williams, the HOA president with a scowl that could curdle milk, stood at the podium, waving her arms like she was directing traffic. "This range is a menace," she screeched. "It's loud, it's dangerous, and it's ruining our peaceful community." I sat in the back, arms crossed, watching the show. But here's the thing: Hill County's got more ranchers than suburbanites, and a lot of folks were fed up with HOAs sticking their noses where they didn't belong. When Karen demanded the crowd support a petition to shut me down, a grizzled old cowboy named Hank stood up. "Lady," he drawled, "if you don't like Texas, there's a highway heading back to wherever you came from." The room erupted in cheers, and Karen's face turned redder than a branding iron. I tipped my hat to Hank, grinning. The HOA had miscalculated badly, but the real showdown was yet to come. The lawsuit they'd filed months back finally crawled its way to court, and I was ready to put this mess to bed. The morning of the trial, I walked into the courthouse, my boots echoing on the marble floor, with Carl, my lawyer, at my side. The HOA's attorney strutted in like a peacock. armed with a stack of papers and a smirk. But Carl was cooler than a cucumber in December. He laid out our case. My ranch predated Crestview by a century. Their fines were baseless since I wasn't under their jurisdiction, and Liberty Range was fully compliant with Texas law. The OA's lawyer sputtered about noise pollution and community standards, but the judge wasn't having it. He leaned forward, peering over his glasses. "Son, you do realize this man's family was ranching here before your client's great-grandparents were born?" The lawyer stammered, and the judge waved him off. "Case dismissed," he said, banging his gavel. "Mr. Thompson, you're free to go, and keep that tractor right where it is." I walked out of that courthouse feeling lighter than I had in months. The lawsuit was dead, my ranch was safe, and Liberty Range was thriving. By winter, the range had become a regional hotspot, drawing shooters from both sides of the border. Veterans ran training sessions, families hosted birthday parties, and I even started a youth marksmanship program. The cash flow turned my financial woes into a distant memory, and I could finally breathe easy. But the sweetest part. One crisp morning, as I was setting up for a busy Saturday, I spotted a familiar face in line at the check-in shack. Karen Williams, OA president and chief pain in my rear, was standing there, clutching a rifle case and looking like she'd swallowed a lemon. I sauntered over, unable to resist. Well, Karen," I said, "come to join the fun." She huffed, avoiding eye contact. "I just want to see what all the fuss is about," she muttered. I handed her a range pass, grinning. "Enjoy yourself, ma'am. And don't worry, I'll make sure it's extra loud today just for you." She stalked off, but I swear I saw her crack a smile when she hit her first bullseye. In the end, Liberty Range didn't just save my ranch. It brought the community together in a way those HOA folks never could. I learned that sometimes, you gotta fight fire with firepower, and that a little stubbornness goes a long way. So, to all you out there dealing with your own Karens and clipboard warriors, remember this: stand your ground, know your rights, and don't be afraid to get creative. And if all else fails, well, there's always room for another gun range. As for me, I'm back to doing what I love: tending my cattle, fixing fences, and enjoying the peace of my family's land. The tractor's still by the barn, the range is booming, and every now and then, I catch Karen sneaking in for a shoot. Life's funny like that.